Good afternoon, dear colleagues from Poland. Good afternoon, Mariusz and Maria. I think we are ready to start without video because we are language experts and we're able to communicate. It won't be an issue. The floor is yours, Mariusz.
Perhaps I'd like to give the floor to Head of the Chair for Translation Studies and Intercultural Communication, Professor Maria Piotrowska.
Welcome and good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to introduce the Chair for Translation Studies and Intercultural Communication, which is, first of all, predominantly a school for translators and interpreters. And it's also an academic institution. It is an institute at the Faculty of Philology of the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, one of the oldest in Europe. So our chair, in a way, combines the centuries-old traditions of teaching and education with innovation and new point of view on translating and interpreting. We are in a group of colleagues today here with different perspectives on translator education. We have members of staff, Dr. Mariusz Marczak with us, and Dr. Łukasz Wiraszka with us, and Dr. Kasia Kwiecińska-Liber with us, and also Dr. Katerina Squillace. So in this array of different specializations and also different language combinations, we, in a way, as staff members, represent different profiles. So in a minute, I'll give floor to all the members of staff present. We also have a representative of student community. She will also have the floor to say a few words about first impressions from a student perspective on our education and translation, teaching and training. To begin with, I'd like to say that our main focus in our approach to translation, to translator education, is that we are practical. We are practical in our academic profile, which is unique, and that means that apart from some modules and courses oriented theoretically, we are very keen on introducing experiential learning and very hands-on experience to our students. And that means we try to introduce them to the environment which is equipped with modern tools for the translation profession. So much for introducing like the chair and where we come from. Now, could we perhaps say a few words about what we do at the chair? Let's start with Dr. Mariusz Marczak, please.
Okay, so I can obviously best talk about the things I'm directly involved in, which is first of all the teaching of a specialization module, within which what I do with students is I organize genuine translation projects that they perform for external clients while using telecollaborative tools. They perform a translation task that could be, for example, a translation of a chapter out of a book, and they do it in close cooperation with the client. So in fact, the idea is to either invite the client directly to the classroom and make them talk about the commission and then answer all the students' questions, or simply the idea is for students to contact the client via online means available to them and establish what the translation task is meant to entail. Obviously, in the course of the project, the students rely on peer support a lot, so the idea is for them to use mutual resources and then feed one another back on the progress they make within the project. But also at the end of the project, they involve in a feedback session where the feedback session with the client, where they can exchange information about the quality of the translation and so on. So it's a very hands-on experience, and it gives them a feel of what it's like to participate in a collaborative project of that type. Also teach CAT tools. So my interest is in developing students' ability to self-learn, to discover CAT tools on their own, rather than just teach them a set of tools that they go away with after the course I teach. Also teach economic translation, but that's an extra thing. Okay.
Thanks. And the floor is given to, wrong collocation, I suppose. I give the floor to Dr. Katerina Spilace, also our staff member. Katerina, could you please come up here, because my teacher
Good afternoon. Здравствуйте. My name is Caterina Spilace. I'm Italian. I'm a member of the chair since 2002. When it comes to my research field, it's semiotics of culture applied to translation and interpretation. And so when it comes to my classes, they are mainly focused on problems concerning cultural transfer in translation and interpretation too, and also on the role of the text as a tool, as a tool in intercultural communication. But
speak a bit louder.
Yes, I would like to, since I'm one of the oldest staff members, I would like to introduce our offer. We have MA studies. We started them in 2008. We have Master of Art for translators, and our students usually translate text of different fields, economics, of course, science, legal translation too, and so on. We are not particularly focused on translation of literary texts, but sometimes we, of course, deal with them for other purposes. We also have postgraduate studies, postgraduate post-MA studies, both for translators and for conference interpreters. These postgraduate studies started almost 20 years ago, and we cooperate with Brussels, namely with the European Commissions, with the Service for Translators and Interpreters, with the SKIC and DGT, and we cooperate also with the European Parliament. We have virtual classes with them, so our students are assessed by translators, interpreters based in Brussels, and we cooperate with them also for training programs, both for the staff and the students. We have pedagogical assistance. That means that someone from Brussels, a colleague from Brussels, come here and cooperate with us, has classes with us, and they, of course, show the student the Brussels point of view when it comes to interpreting and translating skills. Thank you.
And now Dr. Łukasz Wiraszka with a word of commentary on his work.
Hello there. In the UNESCO in the chair for translation studies and intercultural communication, which used to be the UNESCO chair, I do an introductory course in practical translation, where I teach basically the application of the most common techniques, translation techniques. I teach it in practice based on informative text, like everyday text from the press, or text with a pragmatic function like instruction manuals, etc. But starting with the second semester, we introduce specialist translation courses, and what I do is teach translation of academic texts, which I also do in our postgraduate program for specialized translators, where I teach the translation of academic texts and medical texts. And basically, what I try to do, because I'm a linguist, is to my program to be based on my research into the linguistic aspect of the specialized text I mentioned, that is of academic text and medical text, which I study, which I study from the cognitive linguistics perspective, and the studies are based on the application of corpus linguistics.
Thank you very much. And so far, the three voices came from people who have been with the chair for a different period of years, but have some experience in teaching at the chair. And now I would like to present Dr. Kasia Kwiecińska-Liber, who is our, I might say, novice employee, and she joined us only this year. Combining her translation experience, linguistic experience, with psychology education as well. So the floor is yours, Kasia.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm a school translator of Serbian language, and I'm linguistic and psychologist. And I'm interested in role of nonverbal communication in interpreting. So I would like to provide our students practical information about nonverbal communication and conduct on conferences and I don't know, interpreting in court, police stations, so on. And I am also interested in witness credibility and impact of translation and interpreting on witness credibility. And now I'm with my students. We are preparing one research project, and we are going to compare translations between two groups. And first group will know some criteria for criteria-based content analysis, psychologist criteria, and the second group will just translate testimonies, and we are planning to publish our results. So what can I say? I think it's everything. Thank you.
Okay. And now a student's voice.
Yeah, hello. I was asked to add a few words about the student perspective. So my name is Emilia Florczak, and I'm a first-year student at the Chair of Translation and Intercultural Communication. What I especially like about studying here is basically the amount of practical classes and practical skills we can develop and gain. And as Dr. Marczak mentioned, I'm involved in the facilitated project work, which actually now we are translating a chapter of a book about hortitherapy. And as I mentioned, the practical aspect is very important because this translation is not only done for the purpose of the class, but it's going to be used by a charity later on, so other people are going to read it. And it actually just adds more sense to the things you do, yeah, if you know that other people are going to use it. We are also focused on intercultural communication, and this semester we had a very interesting class, which is Global Partnership in Education. And it's a global project, and there are many universities which take part in it, and one of them is Jagiellonian University. And GPE classes are a series of webinars with partner universities. This semester it was the Universidad Continental in Peru and also University of North Carolina. And yeah, and we could in practice experience interculturality, culturality, if I may put it like this. Yeah, so basically first impressions are very, very positive. It's been just 3 months, so it's definitely more to go and more to assess. But so far so good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, we have carefully selected a volunteer student who would only give, positive opinions and praise the church for advantages. No, it's a joke. Sorry. Okay. All right. So these were our impressions from different points of view, and now we would like to make it more systematic and give you like an outline of our activity and our profile. First of all, the aim of our translators training system is to prepare translators for the market. And predominantly it's the market of translation and linguistic services. We are cooperating with employers, with commissioners in the business, in the translation business. Our students are required, it's an obligatory requirement to have a placement during their course of studies. So this interlink between the profession of translation and academia, that's an aspect that we care about very much. We have two profiles of education at the school. One is regular MA studies, degree studies, a 2-year program for graduates of licentiate studies in different language combinations. And the second profile is postgraduate studies, specialization in written texts. That's one. And the second one is interpreting. And it's a year-long program or 3-semester-long program. We are in the process of some modifications and changes, so probably the information that I'm providing now may not be, will have to be updated next year when the changes are implemented. I don't know if there is anything with reference to the aim anybody would like to add. Okay. And as concerns the two modalities, interpreting and written translation, or proper translation as TS claims, I think we are strongly nowadays in our MA program, we are strongly written. So it's as if predominance of modules that are oriented towards written translation. And we do offer, apart from academic courses like seminar, like introduction to translation studies, like monograph lectures, which are obligatory in the framework of academic education. We offer a range of practical workshops in translation. And as Łukasz said, it's media translation or consumer-oriented translation, academic text translation, legal, economic, medical, and many others. We also have a system of optional modules that students can select voluntarily, enroll to a given course of their choice. And the range of those optional subjects is different every year because it depends on the, on different parameters such as, I don't know, staff availability or some visiting professors, student interest even, etc. So it depends. Mm-hmm. And also like a feature that is important to understand how we work is the fact that we, like most schools for translators, operate on the dual system of language pairs. And our language pairs, our language combinations depend on the student recruitment, in fact, because candidates to our school need to demonstrate a certain level of language competence native language, which is Polish in our case, and English plus another foreign language. And we train translators in, let's say, Italian, Polish, Russian, French, German, Spanish, I don't know. It depends what groups are constituted on the basis of the recruitment. Yes?
Yeah, with the caveat that we teach translation basically from and into English, but we only teach translation from the minor languages like French, German, Italian, etc. Okay, we don't call them minor, but they are C languages, that is passive ones.
Okay. And in the history of the chair, we started from those specialized courses at postgraduate level, because that was the standpoint in the 1990s that translators, if you are to train translators, you need to rely on the person's background knowledge already. So only candidates who had education in some areas could be admitted to those postgraduate courses. And then subsequently, 10 years ago, an MA program developed. And MA program, a 2-year program, as I said. Okay. Anything else about the structure and the system that we have? Is there anything on your side that you would like to ask about, or?
Muszę przekazać głos i wtedy się dowiemy, czy nas słyszą i czy nas słyszą.
Dear colleagues, thank you for this detailed presentation. We have compulsory questions which we ask to every school, and besides we have questions from the audience, quite a few questions. Let's start with our standard questions, and then if there is some number of issues that are not covered, then we'll be able to add them. The floor is given to Irina Alexeyeva. Thank you, Alexander. We have standard questions for every school. However, our Polish colleagues, as professionals, as real professionals, have already answered to some questions. In order to ask my standard question, which is not the first but the fourth one, I'd like to start with the introduction of our interpreters. Today the webinar is interpreted by Anastasia Gavrilina and Maria Yakusheva, who are graduates of the St. Petersburg School of Interpretation and Translation. They are your English and Russian voices for this webinar. So my question is, could you please tell us about the statistics for the employment statistics for your graduates, the level of the jobs that they fill, and the number of hours, for example, for translators?
We lost them. Ale widzicie, że to tym razem nie jest nasza, więc tu nie mieliśmy. So I think it's over to us now. They can, because they're saying they can hear us. So I think it's over to us. So we were meant to, I understand we were meant to answer question number 4. About our graduate employment.
Can they really hear us? Okay. The statistics have been done for the whole Faculty of Philology, not the chair itself, which is part of the faculty, and the statistics are very high. Statistics of graduate employment, they reach the level of around 90%. And that means in practice that our graduates have no difficulty in finding jobs. The problem is perhaps the kind of attractiveness of the job that is offered, and not all graduates work as translators. However, majority of them are employed in the language and translation business sector. Very often internship as well. Internship during the studies ends up in employing the student on placement. Okay. The required number of placement hours, which is stated in our regulations, is 120 during the course of the 2-year study program. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, dear colleagues, for your answer. I believe that not every school that participated in our webinars was able to answer this question. How do you confirm or certify the expertise, the qualification of your trainers? And if you certify this qualification, how often do you do that? How regularly do you do that? We had a webinar with the German translation school. They have their own certification system. Those systems can be rather different. How do you, which approach?
Hello. Yes, we'll try to answer that. Okay. So as concerns validation of the qualifications of our staff, there are two aspects of the problem. One is teaching qualifications, and the second is translator qualifications. And in fact, we do not have a system, a separate system for validation. Within the framework of the university, there are a lot of evaluative systems, such as individual staff member grading or evaluation on the basis of his academic research, publications. Didactic work also is evaluated on the basis of student questionnaires and interviews with the supervisor, classroom work observation as well, which is documented. So there is an array of different methods used to check the quality of teaching. However, within the university, there is not a separate system for teachers' validation. We have a very strict system for employment procedures, on the other hand, because staff is recruited on the basis of contest based on achievement, which of course the whole procedure is well documented. It's a formal procedure, well, yes, and that's it. As concerns the translation aspect and validation, we do have our staff members who are translators, practicing translators. There are no formal ways of evaluate their translation practice, but of course in individual CVs, the translation work is documented very well. As concerns translation qualifications, again, simply there exists nothing like a coherent universal system of validating translation teaching qualifications. What we do is, as part of the network called the Consortium for Translator Education Research, we do organize seminars, like summer seminars for teaching translation trainers that also our members of staff participate in. Thank you. And we can, we should move to the next item immediately.
Dear colleagues, our next question. You seem very passionate about what you are doing. We can feel it in what you are telling about your program. What are you proudest of? What are the main subjects of your pride? What do you have that we don't have?
And I think as the chair, I mean, as the director of the chair, I don't think I should really speak on that. And I leave the floor to my colleagues. Are you proud of anything at all at the chair?
We're proud of the director.
That was a very bad answer for the webinar.
That was, of course, very carefully rehearsed, I must tell you.
Yes, considering the technical difficulties with the image,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not sure.
Well, I definitely emphasize this hands-on practice that we give to our students, I presume, because that's something that I think that they genuinely appreciate. And as you could hear, the voices of ours dovetailed nicely with the voice expressed by one of our students who already had a chance to speak.
And we have a larger group of
And we have,
students
we have a large
already.
group which is, they've just joined us, so maybe they will also have an opportunity to speak here. But I think it's what I in particular appreciate about the Chair for Translation Studies myself is that it gives us opportunities to really go in directions which are only being explored in the area of translation pedagogy. So, for example, steering away from that who takes the next sentence approach towards telecollaboration, for example, or telecollaborative practice. Also, the kinds of projects that give students a chance to develop very practical, transferable skills, but which are not directly perhaps related to translation yet, that are so useful and that are so much appreciated today in the translation profession. So I think what's good about the offer of ours is that we offer students an opportunity to participate in genuine translation projects, as I said, in cooperation with real, genuine clients from outside the institution. Use up-to-date tools, not only for translation, but also communication. And one of the latest reports is, in fact, the very latest, this one is not so much a report, but this is a blog published by the Institute of Translation and Interpreting from the UK. It is stated that one of the skills that are really absolutely and ultimately necessary for present-day translators is communication and the ability to work with others, cooperate, take decisions together, also argue their point, also revise the work collaboratively. So that's all that we give our students a chance to do.
We can't. Excuse my interruption. Mm-hmm. You can't see us, but we practice what we preach, and today we are together. It's not like a representation, but there is quite a number of us present in the room.
Yeah. So if I could just add a few words, what I think we should really pride ourselves on is that we give students an opportunity to construct knowledge, not so much transmit it to them, but let them work on things, maybe experience what translation's like in particular contexts, and then on the basis of that build a picture of what it's truly like to them in a particular context with reference to a given task, given translation job, given project whatsoever. So I think that's something that should really be appreciated. And over to my colleagues, obviously.
I would like to add, as the oldest staff member here, that I'm very proud to work for the chair, because first of all, it's the first chair at our faculty that focused attention on translating process, not as a language exercise, but as a translating, process in itself. So the approach is completely different. Another thing that it's very important, I would like to stress, is the language range we offer here, because in other schools that prepare future translators and interpreters, usually the classical combination is provided, I mean classical Polish as mother tongue, French, English and German. While from the very beginning in our chair also other languages were offered, even if sometimes the number of students was not so appealing for for the authorities, but we had classes both at MA studies and postgraduate studies, for example, for sometimes 3-4 students, in order to keep and to provide the service and to provide the service for those students eager to work in other languages such as Ukrainian or, for example, Italian and so on. And that's what it's a strong point for a chair, because thanks to that, I mean that we offer different language combination, not only English, French, and German. Some students both from EU countries and from non-EU countries are eager to come. So we have also students coming having another language, another mother tongue, a different mother tongue, non-Polish native speakers. They, of course, have to demonstrate that they have competencies as far as Polish language is concerned. So we have, for example, students from Ukraine, from Russia, and also from EU countries. When it comes to me, I have at the moment students from Italy, for example, and from France, eager to learn to just improve their translating competencies at our chair. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, thank you for this answer. And my next question, what are the translation and interpretation schools that you cooperate with, that you closely cooperate with, and what are the results and the outcomes of this cooperation? Thank you. Over to you.
We do have cooperation with many universities in Poland, and also within the framework of the Consortium for Translator Education Research. We do have partnerships with universities abroad, such as Zurich University of Applied Sciences, or University of Rovira i Virgili Tarragona, University of Portsmouth in Great Britain, Forli. Yeah, these are the ones that come to my mind the quickest. And in Poland, we Warsaw, University of Warsaw, University of Gdańsk, Wrocław, Poznań, Łódź, Lublin, right, so main institutions that educate translators. And we do have joint initiatives such as virtual conferences, virtual classroom. We do organize workshops together, so certain academic events that are prepared jointly. We also engage in some research projects, and I didn't mention Barcelona, University of Barcelona, where one of our staff members is on scholarship now and doing great research work there.
Yeah, also in the field
we want to be brief because time is running out.
Of course, but also in the didactic field, we've established collaboration, in fact, with a number of universities from all over the world through the Global Partners in Education project.
Oh, yes, yes.
Which are within the framework of which our students collaborate through video conferencing technology with their partners from students, for example, from the University of East Carolina in the United States, or this year it was also the university from Peru that we work with as partners. So, and it is going to unfold because we've been step by step adding new partners. Last year we collaborated with just one university. This year it was 2 universities. Perhaps next year there will be an opportunity to collaborate with 3 universities. So that's a project that is a didactic project most of all, but at the same time I know there's some general research being done, all that cooperation on a global scale by which I think is in fact let's say directed by and guided by and supervised by the University of East Carolina. So yeah, that concerns telecollaboration and video conferencing. Over to you.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic, dear colleagues. How do you find time to do it all? I cannot imagine this largest number of universities, partner universities, while keeping a transparency. And my question is related to that precisely. Could you tell us what you would like to change in your methods, in your methodology, perhaps adjust or correct something? What do you miss from your point of view?
We always focus on closer and closer cooperation with the market. So that's a necessity of modern translation industry and also our pedagogical aim. We do want to modify our postgraduate program because we feel there have been some faults with the system and we want to improve that system. So there will be some modifications at the organization level and a little bit on the content level too, because of course with time translation education needs constant updates, so it's obvious. Anything?
Yeah, and I think we're really trying to act proactively on that. So, for example, we've just established cooperation with Professor Bondarenko within a project where we're planning to actually research the job market in Poland, the translation job market in Poland versus the translation job market in the Ukraine, with reference to employers' expectations towards university graduates, just to bridge the so-called skills gap, right, or expectations gap.
And we do use a lot of technology in our classrooms with CAT tools, and that needs constant care. And I suppose we need to take a good care of some improvements in technology and using technology in the classroom. That's it for the question.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, especially for Mariusz for having for the publicity of for the advertising of our common project. I think it will be a subject of a separate discussion. Now, my question is, how do your students enhance the level of their native language? We believe it's a global problem. Every student experiences problems with their A language, and they have different strategies to fight with that problem. So how do you do it? Do you have a set of measures to enhance skills in native language?
Okay. We have a very simple solution that we have used, we've always used. We have a 2-semester module, obligatory module in Polish language, grammar and stylistic that ends with an exam, and that's it.
Does the trick.
I don't know, we think it does the trick.
Also on a regular basis during our classes, all the time when students translate from Italian into Polish or German into Polish, they are constantly monitored by lecturers, and all mistakes or deficiencies concerning Polish stylistics are corrected. So we try to make sure that students all the time work on their native language.
And excuse my interruption, we have been joined by Dr. Aleksander Gomola, another staff member
Nice to
who
meet you.
just made a comment. To przestał działać. Ale głos doktora Gomoli zaszkodził katedrze.
Nie wpuszcza się fizyków teoretycznych do laboratorium, bo oni wszystko psują.
Tak, no
Tak,
właśnie,
fizyk
no może to
teoretyczny
tak
ma
działać,
tak.
Tak.
Wszystko.
Uczestników
Fizycy
seminarium
praktycznie nie wpuszczają do tego laboratorium.
zapraszamy do 206 po webinarze na ciasteczka.
Thank you. Since the floor is mine, I decided to ask other questions. I decided not to ask a question about the strategy of your school because it's rather clear and you gave us a detailed presentation. But I'd like to create a bridge between my question and the questions from the audience. So, how do you maintain cooperation with the industry? It's clear that your faculty are practicing translators and interpreters, but how do you cooperate with translation agencies? How do you do that?
Well, I would like to sound like we have a solution to every problem because it's not like that. But in case of maintaining this link with the industry and employers, first of all, through the obligatory system of internships and signing agreements with potential placement givers. Also, we do organize so-called career days, usually once a year. And it's a meeting, it's a one-day seminar in which placement providers, employers and students and staff members participate with presentations on any topics related to employment, professionalization, etc. Also, we do have a system of so-called open lectures, and we invite representatives of the translation business to talk to students about what is it like in the real world. Mm-hmm.
Also, I think we on a regular basis invite representatives of the professional market to the conferences we organize, where in fact two worlds meet. On the one hand, it's what we call the academia, but on the other hand, it's the professional market. And back in June, I think 2017, so it was this year, we hosted head of the Polish Society for Translation, the Polish Society of Translation Bureaus, an organization that associates translation agencies and translation bureaus from all over Poland. So she was present there, and of course we did it on purpose to give the floor to a representative of the market. And I must tell you that I participated in a number of sessions that the representative attended, and I must tell you she made invaluable comments about what she saw as a gap between academic research and, as she would probably call it, the real world, right, in inverted commas, obviously.
And we have colleagues who, like Dr. Jankowska, does very market-oriented research with applications. Mm-hmm. And for example, she works in accessibility studies in audio description with projects like Audio Movie, Open Art, that are very important academic research projects, but strongly linked to the business, to the industry and to cultural services. Mm-hmm.
I would like to add that we are also invited and take part in what's called Open Days. These are organized by companies such as IBM here in Krakow, during which they present how the work at these companies looks like, and the possibilities our students may have applying there for a job. And it's very useful because sometimes students have not a clear idea about how some companies work and which are the requirements they have. So, for example, when it comes to IBM, students sometimes think that there is no place for a translator interpreter in IBM except for the role of the pure interpreter and translator, while they look for students with the profile we provide, because they have skills that are necessary in other fields. So not only in translation and interpretation, but also in other fields.
Okay, if I may add a word, I'd like to comment on Dr. Piotrowska's project, which is a perfect example of how academic research is likely to translate into tangible products which can actually be used by active translators, translation bureaus, translation offices, but also public institutions such as museums, cinemas, because the outcome of her project is like a set of applications for mobiles. These are actually mobile phone apps, whereby people with, let's say, either visual impairment or some other kind of disability can use the apps to access the cinema and watch films there, or visit a museum and experience all that through the audio description features of the mobile phone applications that are products of that research. So I think that's what should really be appreciated, because it's like marrying the two worlds, right? The practical and the theoretical.
Over to you.
Dear colleagues, thank you for this detailed answer. The next question is very interesting. Perhaps your school is widely advertised. You promoted your school, and some members of our audience ask about summer schools, summer workshops. Do you have any plans to share your experience with other trainers?
Yeah, I am the Chair of Translation Studies and Intercultural Communications, been involved in the launch of a large project, which is the Consortium for Translation Education Research. And as part of that initiative, we organized the first CTER Congress, which was in the year 2016. So the next one, because we decided it was going to be a 3-year event, and cyclically organized on a 3-year basis. The next one we're planning to organize in the year 2019. So that's a large conference.
In the year of the European Society for Translation Studies Congress is also a 3-year event, but the EST Congress is in South Africa and ours is in Europe. So there is no collision, and time-wise is also a different period. So that's one thing.
Yeah. And feel invited to Krakow, obviously. We would like you all to participate. You're most welcome to join us there. Plus, of course, summer schools, such as some not necessarily summer schools, but like training seminars for translation teachers, like the one we organized this year, just before the summer break, where we had really leading specialists in the field of translation pedagogy, and also practitioners, but researchers most of all, who visited us for a week's time and conducted very practical, hands-on, project sessions. And they were Professor Christina Scheffner, Anthony Pym, also Gary Massey from Zurich, and Maureen Ayres-Begadel. Yeah. So, I think it was an event really appreciated by those who took part in it. And we got very, very positive feedback with questions about the possibility of us maybe continuing that in the future, which we're obviously planning to do.
Over to you.
Well, I'd like to comment on your answer. I participated in one of your events. I participated in summer workshops, and I met and learned about different techniques, interesting techniques. So I confirm that it's true, they were very interesting. Do you develop soft skills in management, teamwork, and so on? This is the question from the audience. Do you think that it is necessary to develop these skills in university, or that are the skills that can be acquired during professional activities?
Of course, we do believe it's possible. I don't know about the opinions of students, if they agree with us, but we think that we can do it in project work or through project work, because some of our classes are conducted as project work with all with all elements of project management, assigning the roles to team members, collaborative learning. And well, we learn a lot about that, and we tend as well to introduce that into cultural awareness in a course that we have at the chair called Intercultural Pragmatics, also in other courses, but Intercultural Pragmatics serves the purpose very well, because by learning about different cultures, we also learn about people's behavior and norms of that behavior and interaction and problem solving too. So it gives some opportunities of having soft skills in practice.
And as for the question of whether it makes sense to prepare students for, you know, any kind of workplace challenge, let's say, in terms of equipping them with soft skills, for example, or transferable skills in general, I think this is absolutely a must today, given that we are living now in these exponential times, so much change happening everywhere, including the world of translation. Like if you read the latest TAUS report, for example, it's clear that it's hard to predict where our students are going to end up. And this is really happening, because even when we look at where our students get employed after university, they do not necessarily end up working as translators. But they perform different kinds of jobs relating to the provision of language services. So they end up language service provision, but not necessarily as translators. They may be required to work as text profilers for to prepare text for machine translation later. They need to work as post editors who can deal with the fluent yet erroneous output produced by machine translation services. So that really requires a lot of skill, but it also requires flexibility. It also requires the ability to self-learn, and the ability to practically try and catch up all the time with whatever changes are being introduced to the industry. So I think it's essential. We can't assume that our students will be involved in translation only. Plus, of course, there are aspects of translation such as localization and accessibility, right? This is where it's with a lot of new technology being introduced there constantly, with a lot of technology entering the area of interpreting as well. Right, and more of it likely to appear in the future. So I think it does make sense to equip, this is what I call it, equipping students for the future, or rather a future. We don't even know what kind of future precisely it is likely to be. Over to you.
Colleagues, my next question is, do you take into account the fact that within your more or less narrow circle, you probably need to prepare interpreters for tourist industry, because Krakow is a highly visited city. Unfortunately, I could hear. Dear colleagues, let me repeat my colleague's question, which wasn't properly heard due to sound issues. So the question was, do you specialize on the region's demand, meaning do you prepare interpreters and translators for your own region, and what is specific about it? What are the specific demands and conditions that govern translators and interpreters in your region? That was the first part. Both questions come from our audience, by the way. And the second part was about tourism-related translation and interpretation. As Krakow is a very a city very attractive for tourists, do you
No.
Okay. I think it perhaps is our strongest field of specialization, but definitely it's one of the strong fields. And with, let's say, projects like audio, movie or open art, the element of preparing texts or messages for a wider audience and audience in the tourist context, like movies, cinemas, theater, etc. That's one area. We do have written translation, tourist translations. We offer optional modules on particular aspects of tourist translation, like menus, culinary books, things like that. So yes, it's one of our training elements. As I'm saying, not the strongest one perhaps, but
Plus, the thing that's already been mentioned by our students speaking earlier on, students performing translations for local entities, for example, local charities like Healing Gardens, the one that our students are currently working for. So that's also like a step towards our collaboration with the local market, because that's a locally based charity. And if our students let's say, get some expertise in the field that's, invaluable for that particular charity, then they're likely to, perform more kinds of commissions of that kind. So, or they'll be at least prepared to do that in the future.
I hope that answers the question.
You did, certainly, thank you. Now the question coming from another colleague. How can you describe your cinema-oriented translation? Is it the same that the audio-visual translation, and how do you organize?
Yes, audio-visual translation, that's what we mean by cinema translation, audio-visual translation, and also audio description, an element that helps in accessing audiovisual context for people with disabilities. And that's the area that Dr. Jankowska, who is not with us at the moment, she's in Barcelona, specializes in.
Yeah, so it's definitely more than just subtitling, because it's really meant, the applications that she produces within her project are really meant to make content of whatever kind more accessible to the user, irrespective of the kind of impairment, right, that they come with, right, to the cinema, or to the theater, to the gallery, or whatever. So
okay, next time hopefully we'll give floor to the author of the project.
So she's actually participating in the webinar, because we saw a post from her online. So I think she's with us, only we can't give the floor to her. So that's why we're trying to stand in, right, for our colleague and speak on her behalf.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. There is another question coming from our audience, and I think that you've already partly responded to it. However, if you found it appropriate to deepen your answer a little, you may do it. So the question is, what is the method that you use to teach specialized translation? How do you immerse students into a subject? How do you control this immersion? Thank you.
We do have supportive modules, namely, how is it called in English?
Data mining.
Data mining, yes. We do have a module on data mining. We do have a module on intercultural pragmatics, which includes procedural elements, translation strategies and techniques. And we do have the module on Polish language, grammar and stylistics. And of course, those targeted modules in legal, etc., in all those areas that we offer. And what is the methodology that the lecturers, teachers use?
Since lecturers are often also involved in practical translation as professionals, so very often during classes some case studies are discussed, namely some problems of specialist translation when someone translates, when a lecturer translates something, he or she has got some kind of task or commission. If it is of course not against law, some problems or cases, some difficult issues may be presented to students as something worth discussing, something worth investigating, to show them on the real life material what it looks like to translate this or that aspect of specialist translation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both transmissionist and non-transmissionist immersive, if not emergent, teaching. So our students quite often are given an opportunity simply to delve into the realm of a particular domain, explore it. Of course, having gone through an introductory theoretical stage devoted to, for example, the concept of terminology, of what it is, how it works, how it's applicable to translation, and then they try to simply work on the domain-specific terminology on their own as part of the project, but with this very utilitarian goal in mind, simply to fulfill the requirements of the project itself, to meet the demands of the client and so on. So it's very practical.
Yeah, and because we started as a chair strongly affiliated with the European Union institutions, and that was our strong leg. We work on the basis of one student in practical classes, one student, one computer. And that means all students are introduced to various CAD tools, and they use them in class also for terminology building, for memory systems learning. And we do have licenses like Trados and others. So for specialized translation, CAD tools are indispensable, and they are used in classes. Over to you.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much indeed. The next question, I think, has already been partially responded to. However, there is a question coming from Olga, and let me repeat it. Perhaps you have something to add about that. So what are the courses that are most subject to modernization, to updating? I do understand it's a constant process. However, perhaps some of your disciplines, some of your courses are particularly subject to the most drastic changes. Thank you in advance, says Olga, for your answer to this question. Over to you. And I do see that the time is nearly over for the webinar, so what I suggest is that if there are some aspects that we haven't yet covered, but you'd like to cover still, could you add this information to your current answer in order for us to begin wrapping up our current session?
Actually, last year we introduced some changes into our program to update its contents and modules. So at the moment, except for changing the postgraduate program, we are not really in the process of any innovations, curricular innovations this year. But of course, within the range of optional subjects that we offer, it's a yearly update. So every year we change the constituent parts of that aspect of the curriculum, and it is meant to respond to the needs of students and student interests, and also to whatever is really important at the moment on the translation arena. Like this year, we were going to do modules on, Kasia, the floor is yours because it's your module.
Okay, I mentioned
Non-verbal, yes.
Yes, yes, I mentioned about my modules. The first one is non-verbal communication.
And we've never had that before.
Yes, and I think that every interpreter can use every non-verbal information we provide the speaker. And I believe that we are low context culture. We can't naturally use it. So it's very important to show students how to use it, how to interpret non-verbal communication information. And the second problem is how to behave as a translator. And because my researchers showed that we usually behave in different way when we translate, because our hands and our head usually are blocked because of stress. So we can also exercise it and master the skills with students.
Or because of the development of, the image culture, so-called semiotic modules that are conducted by Katerina, for instance, are also very popular with students because they are done on the basis of semiotic analyses of, let's say, some audiovisual material, etc. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much indeed for this very detailed and long discussion. Thank you very much for your courage that we did feel, certainly, when you were struggling with technical issues. And actually, I do think that the audio track in our webinar is much more important than the video track. We are linguistic professionals, so we can translate nearly everything into words. So thanks again for having participated in this webinar. And before we wrap up, I would like to greet and to transfer the best wishes of Irina Alexeyeva, my co-facilitator, who had to switch off the webinar because she was in another city and she has her train homewards. So thank you on her behalf. And now I give you the floor for some concluding remarks, which will be followed by technical housekeeping information. So over to you for your closing remarks, dear colleagues.
Thank you for inviting us to participate in Transl Academy webinar, and we are very glad to have had this opportunity. In spite of some technicalities at the beginning and having no image, we really enjoyed talking to you and responding to the audience. And on behalf of the chair, my colleagues present today, and those who could not take part in the webinar, yes, we would like to invite you to our initiative possibly in the future and be in contact with us for further contact on translation matter and matters of translation pedagogy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, colleagues. We are grateful to the chair of for Translation Studies and Intercultural Communication at the Faculty of Philology of the Jagiellonian University for this open discussion. I hope that everyone has learned something from this webinar, and I do remind you that it's only the beginning of our partnership. It's definitely not its end. Please feel free to leave your questions, to ask your questions to the chair at the bottom of our page in the Discuss application as well, and you can also write your questions to our Facebook group or to Twitter. You can also write your questions as comments to our YouTube channel. Be sure that your questions will be transferred to our today's guests. The recording of this webinar will be soon uploaded to our channel, to our website. And as the tradition goes, we invite every T&I school to cooperate with us. We are ready to cooperate with everyone who would like to share the information about themselves with colleagues. So please, colleagues, see you in Transl Academy. Thank you for your attention.